Hi, Deanna Bailey. Welcome to All Time High. We're starting a new episode. This is actually the prototype edition. You and I have been talking a long time about the possibility of doing a blockchain slash crypto slash dynamic dialogue of what's going on in the space. Welcome.
Yeah, thank you. I'm excited to be here. This is the time. Like you said, we've been talking about it for a minute, and this moment just seems like the time to jump in feet first.
Yeah, I mean, I remember last year we were at the Texas Blockchain Summit in Austin, Texas, and we did an interview. We talked about so many different things.
Yeah.
We talked about FTX. There's such a dynamic place and what's going on. We are going to talk about so many things in the future, but the name of the show is All Time High. Tell me what that comes from your perspective as to why we're doing that, and then I'll share a little bit of my perspective and why I think it's a good title.
Yeah. I think all time high talks about the industry. It talks about the market. It also talks about a feeling, right? Like when you're embracing emerging technology, it comes with this feeling of changing the world, this feeling of embracing new policies, of embracing new ways of doing things. And to me, that can produce a pretty good high. So this is the all-time high for me, getting to talk about all the emerging tech that I love.
No, that's great. And I think this is going to encompass more than blockchain and cryptocurrency. Also, AI is such a dynamic influence in today's world
Yeah.
that it'd be difficult to not acknowledge that. I was going to share this screenshot really, and I think as we look back in the history of where the market cap has been, I'm sure, and I think you told me once you started in 2016-ish.
Yep, right around there.
Okay,
Right.
so back then in the June, July of 2016, market cap was $12 billion. And I'm sure for you and others, there were certain points in time where you thought, well, this thing may or may not make it. And then you saw the bull run of 2018 and it
Yep.
got up all the way to 600 billion. And then things kind of steady stated for 3, 4 years. And it really took off in 2020, October-ish into 2021,
Yep.
where we reached 2 trillion. And then by the time we got to the middle of right before the FTX collapse, I keep bringing that up, but it seems like such a seminal moment in what is otherwise the history of blockchain and cryptocurrency.
Yeah.
But we're looking at $2.82 trillion. Things happened. We crashed out, went all the way back down below a trillion. And this is according to CoinMarketCap. You can see the URL up top with that. And now we're back on this kind of climb into more of what would otherwise be characterized as the beginnings of a bull run
Yep.
at 1.65 trillion. So we're looking at an all-time high of being somewhere closer to 2.8. Some would argue 3.0 trillion. But what do you see this market as in total capacity? I mean, I can envision a day with $10 trillion worth of market cap quite easily. How about you?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Are you kidding me? Especially as you start seeing countries moving to digital currencies. Once you give government that much power, that much ability to see into our spending and to control the money that we can touch, I think you're just going to see more and more people filing into Bitcoin because they want something free of government. They want something that's safe, that they know they can rely on, and that the government can't mess with. And we've seen an entire collapse of economies, right? I mean, they say we're not in a recession, but I make a good argument that I think we are, especially if you looked at during Christmas and Thanksgiving, how much was on the shelves, how many deals and discounts people were giving away. And it's because they couldn't move their product all year because people didn't have the money, right? Inflation goes up, spending goes down. And so now, as we're starting to pull out of that, whether we are at this moment or if it'll happen later this year, you're going to see money starting to flow back into investments, and so it'll all come right back into crypto, which is fun.
Yeah, no kidding. If you look at it, the interest rate telegraph, or not the interest rate, but Jerome Powell and the Fed, these implications are huge because of the libertarian movement associated with hard money like Bitcoin. And we're looking at a year where interest rates are likely to be cut 3, maybe 4 times based on the forecast.
Yeah.
And as you kind of consider that, you realize that you might want to have your assets diversified. But let's disclaim this quickly. Neither you nor I are
I don't know.
financial advisors, and none of this is financial advice. This is strictly for entertainment purposes only. And so we hope you have a good time and consider the different possibilities like we do. But at some points, we will represent the consumers like you were talking about there. And in some cases, I'll also represent businesses, because what I see, they had a really good run for, let's say, the second half of 2020, all of 21, and then
Yep.
into 22. The inflation numbers help them drive the cost of products way up. And so what you're seeing now is, even though inflation is a little bit more tame in terms of 2%, it doesn't take, or even 3%, it doesn't take away the 10% that happened last year, or the 10% that happened the year before that. So a lot of times we get confused in terms of inflation's more moderate, but what happened to the price?
Yeah.
And certainly during this era of money printing, the price on things went up a lot. The discounts you talk about are on the back of multi-year increases in price. And so the consumers may not see much in the way of savings, but it does feel like there's deals going on right now.
Yeah. I mean, well, and even if there are deals, who has the money to spend it? Who has the money to take advantage of the deals? Because a lot of people are just hurting right now. I mean, it's, we even, okay, in Texas, right? We had crazy heat in Texas. 2 months, two electric bills, 2 months, $2,000 at my house, right? That's insane. Normally my bill's $180, $200, $2,000. How do people sustain that? It's just insane.
No, you can't. And if you look at and I think you're talking about one of the biggest heat waves in the history of Texas.
Yeah.
60 days without rain.
Was it 60? Felt like 90.
I
Your
don't know.
bill
It
just
might have been.
went
I
up
don't have
over.
exact stats. I'm good with the numbers as it relates to the market capitalization, not as good with temperatures and timing. But I do know that the record-setting bills, we had certainly inflationary impacts. But yeah, it kind of played itself out in a different way with the water bills as well.
Yeah.
I mean, those things that are fundamental to living in a home or even an apartment, there's starting to be pressure on that from the consumer side and the business side.
Yeah. Well, and they say that, commercial real estate is going to take a big hit because a lot of people want to work from home now. So they don't need office space like they used to. And so as you're seeing, like, businesses default on their leases, spaces are open. So that, I mean, the commercial industry is going to, within the next year or so, it's going to take a big hit. And all that's thanks to inflation and COVID.
Yeah, for sure. A lot of businesses are, even if they are going back or coming back in a reduced capacity. I have read articles about people, and I want to be careful here. We're going to try to source most of the stuff that we work with, but not all of it. In regards to San Francisco and New York being markets that were heavily impacted by the reduction in people working in offices, it turns out that sometimes they turn the keys back over to the bank because that's who holds the collateral on the debt that they owe for the office space.
Yeah.
And then some of those same companies are able to buy those properties back at 70 cents on the dollar. So I don't know who really takes the hit on that in the end,
Yeah.
but that seems somewhat nefarious.
Yeah. Yeah. It makes sense. I heard, I want to say, Patrick, Bettman, Bet, he's Pat, whatever. I'll think of his name. He's
All
got
right, that's fine.
and they talked about actually a reverse market crash. And so what'll happen is, as like inflation goes up, right? So our housing prices are going to go up. And then all these people who bought at a high interest rate, their houses go up, the interest rates come down. But because housing rates go up so much, they may not requalify to refinance at the lower rate, right? And so it's called a reverse crash. And you'll see all of a sudden, and when those reverse crashes happen, I mean, both ways, a crash, reverse crash, however you take it, who makes the money? The banks, the
The
credit card.
banks.
I mean, even when during COVID, when they gave us that influx of cash and said, here, you guys go spend this money, what did consumers do? They put it on their credit cards, they went shopping, right? They spent the money. And so businesses reap the rewards of them giving us money to spend. And at the end of the day, the bank still made all of it.
Yeah, they sure did. And as we close out 23 and launch into 2024, we'll be talking about different topics. One good way to move forward is to look back. And so what I'm going to quickly do, and then turn it over to you here in just a second. We've got this gentleman who looks celebratory
Yeah.
from Daily Coin. He's kind of holding his Bitcoin, and he talks about this article in particular has all the things that were on the horizon to make us look forward to 2024. And I just got to say that probably the biggest near term, supposedly, allegedly, possibly near term occurrence would otherwise be the Bitcoin spot ETF approval. That in and of itself would be a huge deal. Do you care to speak to that for a few minutes? If not an hour. We'll keep these episodes about 15 minutes long to keep them consumable. One of the things I
Yeah.
enjoy doing with most content is watching them at 2x. So if I'm not talking fast enough or Deanna's not talking fast enough, just hit that 2x button. But also be sure to hit the subscribe and like button. It lets the algorithm know for YouTube that you actually like the content that we're producing. Leave your comments below. It'll help us encourage us and take us in different directions with the
Yeah.
dialogue that we have. But back to you, 2024 spot Bitcoin ETF. What are your thoughts?
Yeah. I mean, you want to talk about hitting that 3 trillion market cap? Let that happen. Let invest like institutional money. Let it start coming in because right now, Wall Street's kind of got their hands tied. I mean, Bitcoin's a commodity, so you can do that, but all this other stuff is kind of the Wild West still. So as you start and taking these laws and making them more favorable so that the bigger players can take a piece, they're going to, and you're going to start seeing it more and more. And as it goes back and forth, right, that money keeps going, that market cap's just going to keep going up, up, and up.
So, and sometimes I'm going to ask you questions because I met you back in the day at some of the meetups that we've had through different organizations. You, in many occasions, were helping people learn the space. I remember famously, you met one of the people I worked with, and you actually gave her Ethereum. I'm not saying you did that at when or where, but it certainly gets people engaged in the space in a different way. And you have the ability, unique ability, to do that quite effectively because of your history here. So here's the question. It's been challenged. They've been holding off on it, and it seems like we're here at the finish line, and there's some action happening. Is there going to be an issue with the ETF in terms of people holding Bitcoin, the organizations holding Bitcoin? Because I know you've told me, and I've learned this: not your keys, not your coin, not your keys, not your money. Sorry,
That's right. Yeah,
sorry.
it's
Tell
okay.
me more. Tell me
However
more.
you say it, however you say it. Not your
Yeah,
keys, ain't yours.
yeah. It's you don't own it. Yeah.
Well, so there's several things, right? I mean, it's not just the ability to have crypto on your balance sheets. I think that FTX is a fantastic example of this, right? They had these balance sheets that were super inflated because of how they were valuing the crypto that they held, when in reality it was not there at all, right? And so as soon as the market crashed, the entire business crumpled. And I've seen that several times. It's been very difficult for crypto companies to come up and have crypto on their balance sheets, or to say like this coin is our main use of funding, because you're so back and forth of how the market is. And so one day you might be sitting on a $2 million, in your bank that you can use for your business, and the next day it's a $500,000. And so being able to know that balance and being able to say, don't get too greedy, like take profits, this is the money, this is what we're going to use, and this is going to go here. I think it's very smart for businesses. But I think that people are going to get greedy, people are going to see the opportunity, and they're going to miscalculate and misjudge it, because in all honesty, we just don't know. I mean, we're predicting that we're going to have a bull run. Who knows? It could crash tomorrow because of
Oh
things like
yeah.
that, right? So I mean, with history, when you watch the trends are very indicative that we're about to hit another up, especially with the Bitcoin halving coming up as well this year in 2020.
2024, right? Projected
um,
for April-ish.
Yep. And so all those things are things that play into the market, right? And it's still early. It's still early technology. It's still early to understand what it's going to do. And the more people who touch it, the more things they figure out. It's always going to be a second, right? They do this, and then we'll see what the ripple effects are afterwards. So I think it's going to be an interesting year when it goes through.
So here's part of the where I'm going with this. If we're looking at fractional reserve banking as a problem, so either nod your head yes or say no, it is or isn't a problem. What do you
Right.
think? It's possibly an issue, right?
Yeah.
So could we have in a Bitcoin spot ETF fractional reserve Bitcoin? I mean, are we talking about ETFs that are not actually holding the coins? So as a result, they're just paper trailing it? Is that something that could come of this? Or do you feel like these ETFs are actually going to own and have the hard asset?
I feel like you have to have it. No, I mean, how do
I don't,
you? I
I
don't know
think
how
this
you
is
would
some of
do
the
it on.
controversy, right?
Oh, yeah. Well, I
Yeah.
don't know how you would do it on paper. Essentially, you're looking at FTX again, right? On paper, they were golden. Everything was on paper. They didn't really have any of the assets they were claiming to have, and look at what it did to the company. So, if they go and say that they're not going to hold the assets and they're going to do it as a paper trail, then I predict there's going to be a lot of issues with it. One of the things that makes Bitcoin so special, though, is there's only going to be 21 million ever made, right? 21 million Bitcoin, and then it's done. And so it has that scarcity to it that adds the value to it. And if you were to take that hard asset away and say it's only paper, I think you degrade the actual, like, what it's supposed to do, you know? And I think it's dangerous. I think that's a dangerous play.
Well, yeah, that's exactly what happened with FTX and Alameda. They basically were transferring assets back and forth on the balance sheet and on the really income statement, the balance sheet more importantly, because they would take that snapshot and the cash would be in the right places at the right time for each of the snapshots, but it wasn't
Yep.
actually there. And
Yeah.
so same thing happens with fractional reserve banking. When you see snapshots where if there's a run on the bank, the assets, the liquidity isn't available. And so it just sets up interestingly to me, and I know this is a premier prototype episode, that you could create an environment where people indicate there's more Bitcoin there than there is there through these ETFs, because there are, as you and I both know, only 21 million ever to be
Yeah.
created.
But could they? I mean, you can see every transaction. Every person who has a Bitcoin wallet has every single transaction that's ever happened in Bitcoin. And I think that this is one of the benefits of the technology. You can see where all the money is. There is not any hiding of it. So there's two parts to this. One, if anybody were to predominantly hold the majority of Bitcoin would not be successful. And this is what we saw with FTT and FTX, right?
We did.
FTX was the majority holder of FTT tokens, right? Which on their balance sheet looked like this whole big thing. But in reality, because they were the main holder of it, it actually devalued it because the value comes from the exchange back and forth, just like everything else. And so if you were to say that now Bitcoin ETFs can just trade on paper, first you can look at the blockchain and say,
To
okay, you
see
don't
if
even own
BlackRock
that.
owns it, right?
Yeah, like,
Yeah.
you don't own that. You this isn't. Well, I mean, you can't look at the wallet and say, oh, that's a BlackRock wallet, right? But you could say,
Unless they disclosed it.
right.
Which
Well,
at which point, right? Not that they would or wouldn't, but at some point with the SEC involved, you would think there would be some kind of disclosure
yeah,
regime. You would
yeah,
think.
you would think. But I just think that people would catch it. People would know it. Now, I mean, look, FTX happened, Bernie Madoff happened. Again, people get
Enron
greedy.
happened, yeah, for
Yep.
sure.
So, could it happen? Sure. I think it's going to be disastrous if it does. And I think that you can't fool people as
No,
well as much with
I
crypto.
just think BlackRock, knowing the financial infrastructure, is asking. Now, I don't know. I don't have friends at BlackRock. I'm not even watching any YouTube influencers or videos that would otherwise indicate that that's necessarily the case. But when you
Yeah.
see a structure and know how a structure works, such as the banking institution, why wouldn't you want to be able to do that? Thus, being able to sell more of a product that consumers want,
Yep.
right? That financial institutions want,
Yep.
but how would you do it to leverage it? And we know what financial titans do to leverage assets.
Yeah.
So
I mean, essentially, you think about it, if you had gold bricks,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
Paper. I mean, they would just, right? They're like distributing it, but they're not distributing the bricks. It's paper, and maybe they have it, maybe they don't. I kind of look at it as the same. You could go and look into the repository and see how many gold bricks are there, and then balance it against how many papers are out there, right? And I think Bitcoin's going to be the same way. You know, to segue a little bit into the article that you were showing a second ago, did you see that FTX is talking about standing back up in 2024?
Oh gosh, you know what? That is a perfect segue for our next episode. So we're going to go ahead and sign off here on this premiere prototype. Dionna Bailey, thank you for joining me.
Thank
I'm
you.
Jim Flint, and we're going to come right back and record a second episode about exactly that topic. Thank you so much.
Bye.
Bye.